as we're talking about leadership and we're talking about courage, how can I become secure? Because I tell you what, insecure leaders not only hurt themselves, but they hurt each other and they hurt the members of their team. And you might be here today and you might say, well, you don't understand what I've been through. No, I don't. It's not my goal to understand everything you've been through. Of course, I want to kind of feel what you're feeling and know kind of where you've been, but I can't really understand your frame of reference. But one thing I do know is that if you're a part of a team, if you're in a workplace, especially if you're in a role of leadership, maybe you're not even a role of leadership, maybe you're just a part of the team, your level of security will impact the people on that team. The good news is anyone can become secure. You can become secure by practicing 6 simple steps that I'm going to share with you right now. Hey everybody, welcome back. And here we are talking about creating healthy workplace culture. Why do we want to create healthy workplace culture? Because we want a workplace that's positive, that's productive, and that is profitable. Here at Flourishing Workplace, our motto, our mission, our mandate is changing the world by changing the workplace. And we've been discovering together that there's actually 10 traits of people who contribute to a flourishing workplace culture. The first one is personal empowerment. The second one is personal awareness and management. The third one is emotional and social intelligence. And right now, we're going to look at the fourth trait of people who create a flourishing or a thriving workplace culture. And that trait is leadership and courage. I'll tell you what, you will create a flourishing workplace culture to the same degree that you operate out of a place of leadership and courage. Now, what can leadership and courage actually do for you in the workplace? I think that there are so many people in the workplace who operate not out of a basis of being secure and being courageous, but they operate out of a place of insecurity and fear. Did you know that something profound happens in our brain when we do not feel safe? When you do not feel safe, something shifts in your brain. You move out of the prefrontal cortex where you can innovate and create and think smart thoughts and do smart things. And you move into the back of your brain where the amygdala is. And now it's that kind of primal part of you, which is fight, fight, or freeze. And what this means is that we've got to move out of insecurity and into a place of security. But first, what is insecurity? This is such a fascinating topic to me because insecurity is actually uncertainty or anxiety about yourself. It's a lack of confidence. It's a lack of courage. Anxiety and insecurity often go hand in hand. And that's because insecurity is feeling as though you are open to danger or threats at any time. It's a lack of strength. It's a lack of stability. It's a lack of courage. It's a lack of confidence. Now, no matter what you've actually experienced in life, what is more important is the story that you tell yourself about what you've experienced. And so some people's story empowers them. Other people's story disempowers them. The story that you tell yourself about yourself matters. And telling yourself the right story is critical to you growing as a person, but it's also critical to you growing as a leader. This is really, really important. You might say, well, what does the story I tell myself have to do with my performance on the job? Abe, you're talking about creating healthy workplace culture. What does the story that I tell me have to do with that? It has everything to do with that story. Because if you come in with an insecure mindset because of the story that you've been telling yourself, then that will be reflected in your work output and also in your interpersonal relationships. It's impossible for my self-concept to not impact how I relate to you psychologically. It's impossible. That's why Yoda, that great, lightsaber wielding Jedi master, he said that you must unlearn what you have learned. And if there's anything that has been the journey and the experience of my life, it has been unlearning the things that I learned. I'll tell you what, those early childhood formative years are so critical. You know, from 0 to 6, the researchers tell us that we learn 50% of everything that we're going to learn for the whole of our lives from 0 to 6. And so what are the actual things that we need to unlearn? Well, we need to unlearn some of those things that we experience from age 0 to 6. The first is how you were spoken to. I'll tell you what, how you were spoken to matters. I worked with a guy one time who said that his parents always told him that the concrete has more brains than him. And I'll tell you what, this gentleman, by the time I met with him, he was so insecure. He had such a low sense of self-worth, such a low sense of self-esteem, and yet he was very intelligent. And actually in his career, he was quite successful. And yet you wouldn't know that because of how he saw himself. And how did he see himself? Well, based on what his parents had defined him with their words. Why? Because words have power. And so your level of security often comes from what you were told, but it also comes from how you were treated. I mean, verbal and nonverbal communication actually matters. So maybe your parents weren't, and the people in your life weren't like verbally abusive, but maybe they just neglected you. Maybe they just left you to yourself. And I'm not trying to throw parents under the bus because often our parents do the best they can with what they have. But I'll tell you what, it impacts us. And then we take that into the workplace and that impacts everybody else. And so it actually matters. And so where does insecurity come from? Often what we were told, but secondly, how we were treated. And then thirdly, it comes from what we believed. Interestingly, nothing has power until you give it meaning. Okay, I want you to think about that for a moment. That's why Eleanor Roosevelt, she said, nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. In other words, you can be negative about me all day long. You can judge me. You can demean me. You can throw me under the bus. You can criticize me. But if I don't give that power, then I'm good. But the moment I give your words power over me, everything within my life begins to change. And so my question here today, as we're talking about leadership and we're talking about courage, how can I become secure? Because I tell you what, insecure leaders not only hurt themselves, but they hurt each other and they hurt the members of their team. And you might be here today and you might say, well, you don't understand what I've been through. No, I don't. It's not my goal to understand everything you've been through. Of course, I want to kind of feel what you're feeling and know kind of where you've been, but I can't really understand your frame of reference. But one thing I do know is that if you're a part of a team, if you're in a workplace, especially if you're in a role of leadership, maybe you're not even a role of leadership, maybe you're just a part of the team, your level of security will impact the people on that team. It will impact how you treat them. It will impact how you talk to them. It will impact the value and the worth that you place on their lives. The good news is anyone can become secure. I'll tell you what, you don't need 15 sessions with Gabor Mate or Dr. Phil to become secure. You can become secure by practicing 6 simple steps that I'm going to share with you right now. I just took the word secure. I just want to break it down into 6 concepts using each letter of the word secure. The first, S, stands for this: share your current self-worth with a safe person. Now, what am I saying? Share your current self-worth with a safe person. Sounds like a mouthful. It kind of is. What do I mean is this. If you have a low sense of self-worth, you got to find a safe person to talk to you about that with. You shouldn't beat up on yourself. You shouldn't hide it. But you also shouldn't go be vulnerable to just anybody. Like, I wouldn't just go on social media like today and be like, hey guys, I feel low sense of self-worth. No. I actually want to find a safe person, a person who's going to honor that. I really believe in my heart of hearts that the first step in change is acknowledging that there's a problem. I can't change if I'm not honest and authentic about the problem that I'm experiencing. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because for some of you, you just got to find a safe person and to begin that process, to become secure. Hey, I'm feeling down. I'm feeling discouraged. I really am not feeling great about myself right now. Okay, great. The second thing, E stands for explore how you got there, right? In other words, nothing is just random. I know sometimes we like to say, well, I just have these random thoughts and emotions. I'm not saying we don't sometimes have random thoughts and emotions, but if your emotional state, your resting emotional state is insecure like all the time, then you got to figure out like how did I get there? I know for years in my life, I wrestled with anxiety and panic attacks and it's still a problem to some degree. I don't mind admitting that. I don't think that makes me weak. Actually, I think it takes a little bit of courage to mention that, especially publicly. But here's what I'll say. I don't just sit there and say, well, that's my reality. It sucks to be me. Where's my meds? What I try to do is unpack, like, how did I get there? And all of a sudden, that gives me empathy towards myself, compassion towards myself. And, it actually also motivates me to change because I recognize that this is not my natural state. I wasn't always this way. There were some traumatic events that occurred in my life that brought me to that place. And so if I understand that, if I explore, like, how did I get here? Then I can go back there and begin to unwind, untangle, untrigger those things that brought me to this place. And hey, let me tell you, straight up, it's working. It's not perfect because nothing actually is, but it's a heck of a lot better than it was. And so I started by sharing with a safe person, hey, here's what's going on. But then I got to explore it. Like, where did it come from? Now, the third thing that you've got to do if you're going to become secure, and this is what C stands for. C stands for choose how you want to see you. Choose how you want to see you. Now this is really important because back to my example about the guy whose parents told him that concrete was kind of like smarter than him. That was not his choice, but he began to embody that belief because that's what we do, right? As kids, like we don't really know who we are. We don't know our worth and value. So we look at what the authority figures around us, parents, teachers, society, etc., tell us, and then we kind of embody that. We're like, well, they know better than me, so I guess I'm just like concrete here. And okay, that's fine. You explored how you got here, but now what you need to do is choose how do you want to see you? And let me give you a hint. How would you want your children to see themselves? That's the best question to ask. Like, I would not want my children to see themselves as being dumber than concrete. Like, I would not want to see my kids as seeing themselves as inadequate or low self-worth or lacking value or lacking strength or lacking smartness or whatever. I would want my kids to see themselves as brilliant and strong and capable and compassionate and empathetic and caring and all of those things. And so if that's what I want for my children, what should I want for myself? Now, you may not have children. Well, how would you want your best friend to see themselves? How would you want your pet to see themselves? Would you want your pet to see themselves as cared for, as loved, as valuable? Of course. Well, then why can't you extend that same gift to yourself? The fourth thing, the U stands for use boundaries. So to become secure, I started by sharing my current self-concept, sense of self-worth with a safe person. I explored how I got here, and then I started choosing how do I want to see myself. And as I'm choosing how I want to see myself, I have to use boundaries. Now, the purpose of boundaries is not to exclude, but it's to protect. And this is really important. I once worked with a lady, and this was a wonderful lady, highly talented, very intelligent. She had a dream. It was a simple dream. I want to write a book. Because I've written a couple of best-selling books, she asked me to coach her and to work with her to help her write her book. And, we had a couple of sessions together, and she was so excited about it. She started making progress on, crafting her outline and getting her book started in terms of the writing, and everything was moving in the right direction. And then she decided that she would tell her husband. I didn't know she hadn't told her husband that she was working with me or that she was, wanting to write this book. And she came home. She was so excited after one of our sessions. And she's like, whatever her husband's name, just let you know, I'm working with a coach to write a book. And her husband, his face scrunched up. And he said, that's a dumb idea. Who's going to want to read your book? And, a few hours after that, I got a phone call from the lady. And she said, I'm going to have to, cancel our coaching sessions. I'm not going to write this book anymore. And I said, well, can you tell me what do you mean? I thought our sessions were going great. What's going on? And she said, and she told me the story of what her husband said. And I'm happy to let you know that we had a session around that because I said, look, if you want to write a book, it's not so much that your husband is a bad guy, but there are people in your life who have only ever seen you in this light. And now you need to shift that narrative. And some people are ready to go for that journey and others aren't. So in her case, there were some people who saw her as a mom, they saw her as her wife, they saw her as an employee, they saw her as a sister, whatever. But then when you're like, hey, I want to go from wife to author, maybe the husband is insecure and he's threatened by that. And he's like, oh, that's a dumb idea. Who's going to read the book that you want to write? And that's horrible. By the way, men, never do that to your wives, okay? Friends, never do that to your friends. That's a horrible thing. It's better to say nothing than to say something that's so destructive like that. But this lady, what I encouraged her to do was, rather than giving up your dream because of somebody else's ignorance, why not just learn how to have better boundaries? And she agreed. And so we had conversations around that. And then she went back to her husband and she said, look, when you said that to me, it really hurt me. And whether you support me in my dream or not, this is important to me. And so if you say something like that again, we're done. And, not only am I happy to let you know that she ended up writing her book, but I'm also happy to let you know that as far as I know, she's still happily married. And so the husband learned from that, okay, there's unacceptable things to say and acceptable things to say. But the wife learned, the author learned, that I can actually use boundaries to surround myself with positive people. And that takes us to the R. The R stands for reject comparison. Now, if you're trying to become secure, here's the problem. There's always somebody better, right? It doesn't matter if you're a baseball player. It doesn't matter if you're a videographer. It doesn't matter if you're a graphic designer. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if you're a public speaker. It doesn't matter if you're a mom. It doesn't matter if you're a dad. There's always somebody, and all you see is the Instagram reel version of their life, and you don't see the real. And what ends up happening is we get into this comparison thing, and then we self-sabotage, and then we start the imposter syndrome going, and all of a sudden now we can't even function because everyone's better than us. Just stop it. Just reject comparison. You are beautifully unique. There is no one like you. And I'll tell you, in the workplace, this is huge, because remember, I want to bring all this back to the workplace. Like if you're constantly comparing yourself to other people on the job, you can't celebrate the successes of others, because the successes of others will actually threaten you. And it shouldn't. You should be able to celebrate the success of others as they celebrate yours. That's why it's so important to become secure on the job. And that takes us to the E. So the S, of course, is share your current self-perception. The E is explore how did that even get here? The C, and this is a really important concept, is to choose how you want to see you. The U is use boundaries. The R is reject comparison. But then the E is, now that you've done those things, you get to enjoy life. Use positive daily affirmations. Celebrate the small victories. Be that person who every time you get a win knows what it is to pat yourself in the back. And that's actually how you shift that internal dialogue from, oh, I suck, I'm not good enough, everyone's better than me, to you begin to see yourself the way other people see you, which is as positive and empowered and successful and effective. And so as I close this module here today, I'll tell you what, at Flourishing Workplace, we believe in workplaces where everyone thrives, everyone contributes, and everyone belongs. And so can I encourage you to go to flourishingworkplace.com and book a discovery session where we will actually sit with you, help you to construct a detailed roadmap to move from where you are to where you want to be. And then we will literally walk with you to implement. And I hope that's helpful to you. Go to flourishingworkplace.com and we'll see you at our next module, where we'll continue talking about creating healthy workplace culture. Thank you so much.